Hello, fellow travelers. I'm John, and today we will be journeying through Myanmar by stepping into everyday life. In many parts of Myanmar, daily routines have remained much the same for generations. Away from busy cities, communities continue to live and work in ways shaped by tradition, family, and a close connection to the land. This is a place where mornings start early, work is done by hand, and livelihoods are passed down from one generation to the next. Life here moves at a different pace, one that reflects patience, resilience, and deep-rooted customs. Today we'll spend time exploring these quieter areas, observing daily life, and gaining a better understanding of how people continue to live, much as they have for generations. Let me show you where we'll start our journey today. We're still in this same area of the continent. China's here, here's India, and here is the country of Myanmar. And this is where we will begin. So if you're ready, let's grab our passports and let's get started. Today we fly to Yangon, which is the former capital of Burma, known today as Myanmar. Myanmar today, in its contemporary form and in its colonial form, have coexisted now for decades after British departed. I found Myanmar to be so picturesque and so unique and so full of surprises. I believe we'll need more than one YouTube session to do it justice, so this is going to be the first session that we cover. Our first side trip today is to the Inle Lake. And our guide on this trip is Wassaw. We called her Z. She was a native of Myanmar. She was quite young. She was 18 years old, and she already had earned her guide license. She turned out to be just a wonderful ambassador for her country. She was very knowledgeable. We just enjoyed having her on. Our hotel where we stayed is a really nice, quite new hotel that was built along Inle Lake. And you can see it here in these pictures. It was well situated and well run, and we enjoyed being there very much. This whole area was protected by some type of conservatory or something. You see in the picture, it was called a Inle Zone. I was quite impressed with these folks that were protecting this, because this was a very unique area and quite fragile in my mind. Just completely occupied by these native people on this unique body of water. We took these really narrow, long, very fast boats out early in the morning, and we traveled all the way down this 14-mile lake, and just so picturesque. All of these people live in these houses built completely out of bamboo. Everything that you can possibly imagine in keeping the house running, a house occupying, this area was just completely surrounded by activities that were built on the water. And you just saw all manner of comings and goings and everyday life. I even was able to snap this picture of one of these that was actually the post office. And one of the things that I'm pretty interested in, mechanical things, and so the way these boats that they have here were propelled, I had to snap a few pictures of these boats that have quite large motors mounted in the back, and a very long prop that sticks out, and it makes a lot of noise, and a lot of water flies around them and all, but it gets them to where they want to go. One of the main features that I wanted to see on these lakes was this gardening that was taking place, which is the main part of these people's livelihoods. They would take this mud up off the bottom of the lake. They would take that mud and mix it with just great quantities of these local water plants, let's call them, and they would mix that together, and they would stake this mixture of stuff down with all these many bamboo stakes, and they would run this just like a farm. And you can see in these pictures, area so fertile, all this water and this mud and everything they got going on. You see just really beautiful, lush crops of all kinds of vegetables and flowers. This is just one of the main incomes of this lake. So as we continued on, it was fascinating to just see people, children, men, women, just in their everyday walks of life, moving their products back and forth moving people back and forth. And these boats appear to me to be handmade, all the way from little tiny one-man craft to quite large, what I'd call freighters. They were being built right along the lake there. And it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating to see these boats that were carrying huge quantities of products, back and forth. I would say probably, from my viewpoint, the second thing that this lake provided was quite an opportunity for the local people to fish. And I didn't get the impression that this fishing was so much commercial as it was to just feed the local population, but they had developed all kinds of seining operations, people in the water, people floating in these boats with little seines and throwing cast nets. I never saw one fish. Whatever they were catching, they wasn't holding it up, for me to take a picture. But you can see these very unique looking fish traps. These gentlemen in the pictures here using that famous one-leg paddling technique to have their hands free so they could either do these traps or throw cast nets. Of course, you could just hardly take enough pictures of it. It's just very, very photogenic. So as we moved down the lake, one of the things that we really came to see was what they call the 5-day market. And you can see these pictures of this. These people were beginning to come to this market in the morning as we got there. And it was a really large bunch of people that were coming, and apparently this market moves every day to a different part of the lake and services the people that live around there. Crafts, I'm going to call it, goods, services, vegetables, you name it, were being brought and sold and bartered for. You can identify the people that were coming out of the hills. It's what they term the hill people. And you can see they were identified by these various headdresses, and each group, I guess the locals could tell where they'd come from because of these headdresses, but you can see dark, you can see orange, you can see red, you can see just different, almost like an individual costume. So here in this picture you can see my wife. She got kind of caught up in this bizarre type buying and selling, and she was having a really good time. And you can see her here trying on what the folks call a lingerie. She, I don't know what she was able to deal with right here, but I can promise you it wasn't a credit card. They wasn't taking anything like that, but she seemed happy trying it on, and I couldn't resist taking this picture. But I was kind of caught up in all the activities that were going on with a guy here that had a forge and is actually doing metal work. He was making knives and selling those and bartering for them. And ladies that had picked potatoes and peppers, onions, had them all spread out in the bright sunshine and made beautiful pictures. It was very happy people. You can tell just from the faces of the moms and children. They were extremely happy. And I enjoyed just walking among all these booths and seeing everything. One thing I was struck about was how much demand there seemed to be for firewood. And I guess if you lived on a lake, there wasn't a lot of trees to cut down, so one of the products that was in demand that were coming out of these hills to be swapped for were these firewood. And these ladies would seem to be the primary folks that were carrying this firewood, and you can see them just stacked on their head, and I'm fascinated how they would, I just don't know if I could do what they're talking about, that huge bundle of wood on top of your head, and that was quite an interesting thing. But the ladies seemed to be working with the wood, and the men seemed to be loading the more bulky things like bales of rice and hay and all kind of bundles and bags and packages. Kind of interested also in how they had taken what appeared to be mostly farm tractors, like you'd walk behind, and actually used those as propulsion to pull these trailers. So they were pretty ingenious what they had to work with and what they'd done with it. And when we left the 5-day market, we went to an area where they were having a competition, like two teams were competing. And I don't know how many teams there ultimately were, but we were observing two teams, and there were 20 of these young men on a team, and they were using this one-leg rowing technique to compete to see how fast they could cover a certain distance out there. And so they were having a wonderful time, and the winning team was presented a silver award, and somehow or another my wife got chosen to present that, and so here she is handing out this silver award to this winning team. Of course, they were celebrating and having a wonderful time, and one of them did this little victory dance that was very amusing. We left here, went back to the hotel for lunch, and then we went right at sundown to a very unique place. It was a bridge. It was called the U-Bend Bridge, and I think that was actually the name of the guy that built it. It was famous for being the longest and oldest teakwood bridge anywhere in the world. It was 4,000 feet long. Apparently, it's a very vital crossing for all the local people. As the day began to wind down, people were going back and forth, I guess, from where they worked to where they lived. And pretty soon it got to be a really interesting crowd, and a lot of people on this bridge. And it made for beautiful photographs. And as the day went on, all this activity began to be backlighted from the sun going down. And so it just made for a really beautiful picture, very iconic. I'm not a very accomplished photographer, but you can see even an amateur could catch some really pretty backlighted shot that you see here. And of course, this final photograph, I couldn't help but put that in here because as we got ready for dinner tonight, my wife appeared in a recently acquired lingerie, and so whatever she was bartering with, it must have been successful because here she is in her newly acquired purchase. So we'll end on that for today. What a meaningful experience has been spending time here in Myanmar, witnessing daily life, age-old traditions, and simple routines that continue to shape these communities. It's a reminder that some of the most powerful travel experiences come not from landmarks, but from observing how people live. I'm grateful to you for joining us as one of our co-travelers. On our next journey, we'll continue discovering new places, sharing stories from around the world with more meaningful experiences still ahead. In the meantime, if you'd like more stories from the great outdoors, be sure to visit my Amazon page and explore my books that are listed there. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you'll be the first to join me on the next adventure as it begins. Until then, keep making memories with the people you cherish the most. And remember, life's best moments are found in the great outdoors. Let's keep exploring this amazing world together.